8:03, 3 minutes past 8 o'clock, and I've got the lovely and talented pair of young ladies with me today, Nancy Silvertooth, and of course, who could ever forget Betty Fraley? I looked up last Thursday night doing karaoke, and somebody said that Miss Fraley's here, and I'm saying, huh? I look over, and there she is, waving big old time. She's on the opposite side down at draft. And I said this morning, I asked her how she got down there. She said Scotty wouldn't zip her in, but she managed somehow. Get one of them. You get one of them electric wheelchairs.
I wish I had a golf cart or a wheelchair or something. I'll tell you, it was very, very difficult.
And I have found, because the only problem is you got to walk the whole distance of the marina to get to the very far end.
Yeah.
That's the shortest ramp.
Yeah.
It is at the very far end down by the wedding chapel.
Yeah.
And that's the one I use.
Yeah.
I walk all the way down there and go up.
Do you know I went down the steps and came back up the steps because it was shorter.
Wow.
It would take me less time.
Wow. She's amazing, isn't she?
She is. She's my inspiration, because when I think about, I believe I'm getting too old for this, doing this stuff, and I think about Betty, and she's a couple of years older than I am. I think
I'll be 87.
So,
wow.
Wow.
You don't
more
look
than a couple.
You don't look 87.
No, she doesn't.
Well,
she does.
I didn't feel 87 until just recently, till this happened to me. Being handicapped, being a new handicap. Please don't park as close as you can to a business. Please don't. And please do not use the handicap stall in the restroom. I'm standing there waiting, and 3 stalls come open, and I say I have to wait for the handicap. Well, a person who's in there is a bebopper, and they bebop out. But sometimes they'll stay in there forever because they're embarrassed to come out.
I got you. Well, it's nice that you were able to wait till you were this old before you had to start doing the handicap stuff.
Oh yes,
that's the beauty.
I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed, and I realize that you cannot have good health for 100 years.
Right. Yeah. Or some people do, but they're really blessed.
Yes, they are.
So what's on y'all's plate today?
Okay, we're gonna kick off our our Common Sense Matters program this morning. Common Sense Matters is sponsored by our Franklin County Democratic Party, and along with common sense, we believe facts matter. They are stubborn little creatures, but facts matter. Today, Betty Fraley, to my right here, and I will be bringing you facts. The first fact we'll mention is voting. Voting is so important, and guess what's going on right now? Early voting for our city council members.
It's ridiculous.
Why is it ridiculous?
The number of people that have voted already, a little over, not even 200 people, I don't think.
One day there were 25 people who voted.
Well, and I may not get this exactly right, but it seems like I've heard somebody say out there more than once, the closer to you that an election is, the more important it is.
That's right.
These are people that affect our everyday lives in the cities we live in. So please make that effort. Go ahead and vote early. Of course, you can wait till Election Day, August 5th, but it's just much easier and quicker just to run out there. I think they're there from 8 to 4:30, and probably on Saturdays from till noon. And early voting does end. I looked at my list this morning on July 31st.
So that's next week.
Yeah. They got a few days, but just please don't think of your city officials as minor people that you don't find out all you can about them and go vote. Okay. Other facts that we want to deal with this morning. You've heard this before, but we think we ought to remind you. Betty Fraley is going to be letting us know reminding us again what George Fraley, Democrat legislator, representative, did while he was in office, what he did for Franklin County, and so many of of those things are ongoing, will benefit us for years. And we want to sort of draw a contrast between what George Fraley did while he was in office as between the last 10 or 11 years that we've been under county and state Republican administrations. So Betty Fraley, and please listen carefully to this so you'll be up to snuff on what we're talking about this morning. Betty Fraley.
First of all, I want to mention Joanne Davis. Joanne Davis is having knee surgery, and we need to remember her in our thoughts and prayers. I'm really sympathetic with anybody who has to have knee surgery, and especially when we're senior citizens and have to have surgery, So please remember Joanne. August 2021 will be the 5th anniversary of George Fraley's death. With your permission, I'd like to spend a few minutes honoring him for his many contributions to the people of Franklin County. He worked at Arnold Center for 32 years, supervisor of the metallurgical lab, which meant he x-rayed parts of rockets before a launch, and it was a very interesting job. 13 of those years, he was on the county commission and farmed. He was a workaholic. Here are the things he accomplished in those positions in your service. Now, he was county executive, and he also served in the state legislature. But here are some of the accomplishments that he did. 41A highway from Deckard to Shelbyville. While county executive, Nissan Corporation was located in Franklin County, and I think that was the most excited I've ever seen George. His job in that thing was to make sure that the farmers who lost their land got a fair market value for their land. So he was the negotiator with the farmers for the land. When Ned McWhirter came for the dedication or for the opening at Nissan, he said, "George, take me out on the front. I want you to show me what land we bought for Nissan." He did the Solid Waste Authority. It was established for recycling in Franklin County. He established convenience centers in various locations in Franklin County. He named all the public county roads in conjunction with the E911 system, implementing compliance for the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's the elevator at the courthouse. Purchased the first computers and fax machines for the Franklin County Courthouse. Highway 50 bypass was approved during his time. Of course, it didn't come into being until after he was in office in Nashville. Highway 50 bypass interchange to U.S. bypass recently approved while he was in, now this was while he was in the courthouse. And then the Highway 476, which is the Mansford Road to us, was also approved then, but it didn't come into being until after he was a state representative. That is an interesting story in that we just now have done a renovation to the Mansford Bridge, and it was an extensive renovation and would have cost the county no telling how much money, but George recognized that Thames Ford State Park was the only state park in Tennessee that did not have a state road in front of it. So therefore, he worked very diligently, and he and Senator Cooper both worked very diligently to get that changed. Senator Cooper called Bobby Clark and said, "Bobby, I'm so sorry," said, "it has not happened. It's not going to happen. I've done all I know to do." Bobby said, "Well, I'm going to call George Fraley and thank him for the effort that he's put in on it." When he called George, George said, "Well, I don't know where he got his word. It's a done deal. I just haven't had my assistant call you to let you know, but it is a done deal, and it's Highway 476 that goes straight at Broadview, turns right at Broadview Grocery. It's 12 miles long, and the state has to maintain it now instead of the county. Highway 64 from Franklin County to Lincoln County was his project, and he was responsible for bringing pre-K classes to Franklin County, to all Franklin County elementary schools. He got a call from Nancy Graham one morning when they were not in session, and she said, George, we need one more pre-K class. He got on the phone right then. He was on the phone all day. By afternoon, before she left the board, he called her and said, Nancy, I've got two classes, two more pre-K classes. The only two things he did not get done was he wanted the vocational school, which of course has come to fruition since he left office. But I was in the meeting with him and Richard Stewart and Christine Hopkins, and of course Christine cannot be praised enough. Richard Stewart appointed Christine to work on a vocational school. She worked on it 12 years, but she got a vocational school, finally. And of course, he also tried to get water on Key Springs Mountain, and he was not successful doing that. And those were the only two things that he wanted to do. And I have a list of some of the grants that he received. He was instrumental in $40 million worth of grants coming to Franklin County. And here are some of them. Airport in Swanee Utility District, utility grant for Center Grove, Winchester Springs area, utility grant for Huntland. City of Estill Springs grant, I remember that one was $20,000. Some of these I might remember. Deckard Recreation grant, I think, was $8,000. Broadview Fire Department was $10,000. Capitol Hill Community Center was $8,000, and they roofed their community center with that. Key Springs Community Center, Sherwood Community Center, Belvedere Utility District, Huntland Utility, Highway 64 Drainage Grant, Deckard Drainage Grant, Tennessee Environment Recycling Grant, TDOT Winchester City Park Walking Trail Enhancement Grant, Tennessee Recreational Service Soccer Complex in Winchester, Rural Development Grant for Winchester Water Plant, Tennessee Department of Tourism Materials Grant for Winchester, Tennessee Arts Commission grant for Dogwood Festival, TDOT enhancement for downtown Winchester revitalization. And that was the square in Winchester, and I saw that happen. The governor came to Winchester quite frequently when George was in office. And we were at a meeting in the old Prince drugstore building when it was a restaurant. And Beth Roten came to me and said, Mr. Fuddy, you think you could get me an audience with the governor? And I said, well, certainly. So I introduced her and told him that she was city administrator. She said, Governor, would you step out on the sidewalk with me, please? And he did. And she said, now look at our city. Look at our sidewalks. We need a facelift. He said, Miss Roten, you get somebody to write the grant. You give the grant to George Faley, and we'll see what we can do. Yvonne Stewart wrote the grant. George took it and ran with it, and we were one of, I believe, 6 cities in the state of Tennessee that received this grant, and it will last now until 2026. And the money used there is sales tax money that we would have to send to the state of Tennessee, but they are allowing us to keep that portion of the sales tax so that we can have a beautiful square. And it was for 15 years when he did it, for 18 years when he did it, but they have extended it now until 2026, which I'm very grateful for. He obtained a HUD housing grant for Winchester, a CDBG housing grant for Winchester, City of Winchester revitalization through Tennessee Department of Finance, and that's what I just talked about. Franklin County Community Reentry Establishment, and that's the program that Christine does now at the jail. 6 separate grants for Winchester Municipal Airport, and TDOT safety grant for Franklin County, and an $85,000 grant for adult education. So, and that was the only things that Cowan has about 20 grants, but I want to mention the Cowan Railroad Museum, which he made a state museum, and then the construction of the Boiling Park, and those are the only ones that I'll mention that were in Cowan. Some of the others that I mentioned in the long list were from Cowan. So I just wanted to call your attention to the fact that this is what happens when we elect Democrats. I don't mean to, I hope that nobody takes this personal, but I just think you need to pay attention that it's been 11 years since he was there, and of course we excuse everybody from last year. Last year was a dead year. Nobody did anything or could do anything last year, so we'll say 10 years in the state legislature and 4 years in the county. Has David Alexander just been in 4 years or 8?
4, I believe.
So there's 15 years that we've had just like George had. And I think you need to sit up and take notice, and I'd like to have you vote Democratic.
We sure would. Democrats, we have a shirt that says Democrats have your backs. And if you'll even, if you're paying attention to the national news and what Congress is doing, you'll see they're going at it and they're divided. Republicans and Dems. Democrats are fighting for the everyday needs of people that we all face every year. Every day, not every year, every day, just living our lives. Democrats are fighting for those rights and benefits for us. The Republicans are not cooperating.
And the COVID-19 package was voted on by Democrats entirely. Don't forget that. The COVID-19 relief. And I wanted to say one other thing.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask you.
This is there's been some talk about negative campaigning, and does it work? After George did all that, in 2010, the Republicans wore a button that said, "Throw out the trash" on November 10th. George lost in 2010. Don't forget that. I'm hesitant to say, and I regret to say, but I'm afraid that negative campaigning does work. Remember, President Trump beat out 10 or 12 opponents in his presidential primary by personal attacks on each of them and many of their family members. He reveled in attacking John McCain, who was a true patriot in my opinion, even after his death. Of course, John McCain was not running against him, but John McCain was a target of his. But yes, I'm afraid that negative campaigning does work.
Negative campaigning and the sole issue that many people vote on, which is abortion. And I found, it's my turn, Betty?
Yeah.
Okay. I accidentally ran across an article that I had in a file. I didn't realize I had it last night. By William T. Cavanaugh, Cavanaugh, not our Justice Kavanaugh. William T. Cavanaugh, I'm looking for. He's a school official. He's Catholic, and anyway, I'll find who he is so you'll know what I'm talking about here. He titles this article, "Electing Republicans has not reversed Roe v. Wade. It's time to change our strategy." And this is from the viewpoint of a Catholic, and he's an official at a school, and I'll find it before we leave here. He starts out saying, and it's lengthy, so I'm going to just hit the high points. I did not realize, I got to start that sentence. When looking for extracurricular involvement my first semester in college, I went to meetings of two groups, Right to Life and College Republicans. It was the fall of 1980, and Ronald Reagan was running on a staunch anti-abortion platform. I thought that we needed to take back control of the Supreme Court from the Democrats and overturn Roe v. Wade. You'll recall that I think many of our evangelical brethren voted on the basis of they hoped that the president that they were elected would appoint Republican Supreme Court justices, and they would get Roe v. Wade overturned. Okay, Mr. Kavanaugh goes on to say, I did not realize then, now this is 1980 I believe, that there had not been a majority of Democratic appointees on the Supreme Court since 1970, 3 years before Roe. Many people don't realize that this is still true today. there has been a majority of Republican-appointed justices on the Supreme Court for 49 of the last 50 years. And yet, abortion is still legal. Roe v. Wade's still there.
Yeah, I sure wanted to point that out because they've been in charge now for 40 years, and much of that time, I mean, we've had 40 years of presidents since Roe v. Wade was made a law. Okay.
Okay.
Most of that, they also had control of the White House, the Supreme Court, and both houses of Congress, which means that any day of the week, they could have gotten rid of Roe versus Wade if they had wanted to. But it's a good political football.
Right, and he goes on to say, have Republican leaders failed to achieve the reversal of Roe v. Wade because they do not really want to? This explanation is more plausible than anything else. Republicans in power have been remarkably good at realizing their top priorities. Now, you think about the Republicans that are feeding the higher-ups, that are feeding information to our people that are, like in Franklin County, that go to the polls and vote. He said they're good at realizing their top priorities. This is Republicans. Cutting taxes for corporations and the wealthy, increasing military spending, cutting food stamps and other safety net programs, eliminating limits on election spending by corporations, gutting environmental protection laws, maintaining a preferential option for nationalism over refugees and immigrants, supporting the easy availability of assault weapons, keeping health care a largely private and for-profit industry. He goes on, greenlighting the Contras, the Iraq War, torture, the death penalty, and a host of other policies that run counter to Catholic social teaching. Of course, this man is a Catholic. On ending abortion, however, arguably their main selling point to Catholic voters, they have been strangely ineffectual. I mean, they're pushing what they want, and at some point, at some place, he points out what Republicans in power want is votes. They're putting out whatever misinformation they need to get people to vote Republican.
I'm not for abortion. I want to make that clear. I am not for abortion, but I am pro-life. But I'm pro-life. I'm not pro-birth. I'm pro-life. When you do not take Medicaid, when you do not accept Medicaid expansion in Tennessee, look how many people have died. That's pro-life. And this COVID-19 stance that Tennessee legislature has taken is pro-life. It's not pro-life, but it should be.
Right, even affecting children now.
Yeah.
And he ends it up by saying, the one strategy for reducing abortions that has been proven to work runs through love, not power. Support for women who may not feel able to carry pregnancy to term. This requires not blind allegiance to a political party, but the promotion of a culture of life. For years, some in the pro-life movement have struggled to change the perception that opposition to abortion is about control over women. And then he goes on to say that that's not the way to go.
Well, and in 1973, when it was voted in, 6 Republicans on the Supreme Court voted for it, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican abstained, and 1 Democrat abstained. So that's the 9 members that run the Supreme Court.
And
it is a Republican law. And here are the presidents: Nixon, Ford, Reagan, Bush, you know, in recent years, in the last 32 years. And they could have changed it any time they wanted to, and they don't.
They haven't. They haven't. They have not. And here's something that just really, really bothers me. Of course, I hear a lot. Have heard a lot over the years of Jesus' teachings about hypocrisy. I mean, he really gave the hypocrites down the road, and it, to me, isn't it somewhat hypocritical to keep talking about what happens to a fetus in an abortion, but yet just simply ignore the horror and the devastation that a high-powered rifle slug does when it tears through the body of a 6-year-old child. Sandy Hook victims, for instance, 6 and 7 years old. And somehow, and then, of course, after that, I recently watched a segment on what Congress did, this one congressman especially, to try to get something done about, especially the assault rifles, high-powered military-style rifles. He could not get it done. Why? Because of Republican opposition. How can you ignore what happens to a 6 and 7 year old child when shot with a high-powered rifle? How can you not be touched with that? And as Betty Fraley said, I'm opposed. I don't know anybody out here. I have never run into anybody that says, oh, I'm for abortion, I'm for abortion. But my goodness, can't we be sensible and look at the facts? Look at the facts. And as Betty pointed out, pro-life people, I don't understand why pro-life people can't be pro-life.
Not just pro-birth.
Not just pro-birth. And in mentioning this, I want to give you some helpful information. Tennessee Justice Center. If you need to find information with regard to insurance or any of the benefits that lower income people need, go on the Facebook page of Tennessee Justice Center. Tennessee Justice Center is a 501c3 nonprofit law firm that was actually formed back during when Governor Bredesen was governor. He had promised to clean up TennCare when he got elected. Well, sure enough, he did, and a lot of people were thrown off of TennCare, lost their insurance, sick people, children, and Tennessee Justice Center was formed at that time, and they filed lawsuits, represented these people free, filed lawsuits for TennCare people, and they do that today still. TennCare people who had lost their health insurance, and they took on a Democrat Governor Bredesen, because he was a businessman. He came in and did what he said he was going to do. Tennessee Justice Center has all kinds of helpful information about insurance. Why they're constantly fighting for expanding Medicaid. And there are so many reasons, and so many people are hurt because I've heard 280,000, now they're saying 300,000 people. That includes veterans that don't have insurance. That includes children, people from all walks of life.
I've never understood why.
And it's just unfathomable, really, why. And people out there, call up your Republican legislators and say, hey, Governor Lee and our legislators, why aren't you doing this? Under the American Recovery Act, I don't think that's the right word, but anyway, President Biden included extra benefits for states that had not expanded Medicaid for them to expand Medicaid. They still haven't done it.
And millions of dollars of our money goes to other states every year that has accepted Medicaid.
Right. Oh, and speaking of the American...
We lost 14 hospitals.
Yes, and I was talking last night with my daughter-in-law, whose home was in Parsons, Tennessee, a little bitty place out in West Tennessee. Her mother had died recently, and her father still lives there. And of course, he's an older man and can't drive very far. And they were talking about at the time they thought she might have to go to a nursing home, and she said, or I think she was in the hospital. But anyway, the hospital she wound up going to was so far away he couldn't go see her. There are all sorts of results from these hospitals closing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Employment, for one thing.
Yes, people lost their jobs.
Look at all of that. But But of course, the reason you can't vote Democratic is because of GAG: guns, abortion, and gay rights. And I think Nancy has some. Well, I'll say this: I think the permitless gun law is the worst piece of legislation that's ever passed in our legislature. It was not something that was done for us. It was something that was done to us, in my opinion. This is just the craziest of the crazy to me, to say that anybody 21 and over can carry a gun. We've got a lot of crazies out there, and I'll tell you, the last time I made a road trip, I thought, well, I hope I don't cut anybody off, or I don't go too fast or too slow, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, they'll jump out with a gun and
I don't
shoot you,
feel
yeah.
safe, nearly as safe as I did. And I think, Governor Lee seems like such a good man. I think he was pressured into signing this. And we need legislators that will listen to the will of the people. 67% of the people wanted Medicaid. But was it voted in? No. We have to vote with the big money and NRA and all of those people who control the money instead of constituents. You have to carry the wishes of your constituents, and of course school vouchers. Of course, I could talk all day about school vouchers, but you have to. I thought you did. I thought you had to vote the wishes of your constituents. When 67% of the people want Medicaid expansion, it just doesn't seem feasible that it has not passed.
Well, and if you call, by the way, I'm going to give you the phone number of Tennessee Justice Center, and I covered it up here. Write this number down, please, 615-255-0331. If you have a TennCare problem of any kind, call Tennessee Justice Center, 615-255-0331. They can cut through the tape, and I've received calls from mothers who will say, I took my child to the doctor yesterday only to find out that their TennCare had been terminated. Didn't know it.
Yeah.
And then getting it back is just a bunch of bureaucratic red tape.
Yeah.
They don't make it easy. You would think that you'd be able to, for a child, pick up the phone, or the doctor could call, but nope, you've got to go through the red tape. So keep that number handy. Go on Facebook, just Tennessee Justice Center, to their Facebook page. That's a very, very helpful organization. And I'll throw something else in here that, and some of you may or may not know this, with regard to abortion and the disinterest of the Republican Party way back. I have an article here that points out that when, I believe it was during the Jimmy Carter administration, IRS was taxing religious universities who were not integrating. Yeah. And the Jerry Falwell is mentioned widely in here. His religious organization, they were mad as fire at Jimmy Carter because he was enforcing that IRS law, and they mentioned that, I don't know whether it was his university or another one, they hired one black person who didn't even stay, but they resisted. In fact, there's a sentence in here somewhere, and I can't find it, that makes the statement this group's opposition to abortion grew out of a policy that they thought that they could convince people that they could push, as opposed to, they didn't think they could sell the idea of, look, they're taxing our university. They're privately owned universities. But they jumped on abortion, and this was in the late 70s, and this article also says that they were determined that Jimmy Carter would not receive a second term.
Oh, yeah.
And of course he didn't. And so, folks, please, these are facts we're giving you this morning. Please just type in your computer the real cause of the Republican opposition to abortion, and just see what you find out. It's there, and then you're going to the polls and voting on that one issue, and to heck with everything else that's valuable. It doesn't make sense.
And I think you were going to talk about, it was a Supreme Court that also voted gay rights. I was shocked to death that they voted gay rights when they did. That's been pretty recently. So the reason you can't vote Democratic is because of gay rights, gun control, and I certainly am for gun control. Not taking up your guns, that's another false thing. When Al Gore ran, they said that he had warehouses already rented. They're going to come to your house and get your gun. Have they come yet? I don't think so. Facts are, you need to do some critical thinking. That's just, I'm just trying to get you to think and to search and to look and see what's happening and what has happened. And, $40 million in grants to this county meant a whole lot. We haven't seen very many grants lately.
And folks, what is I can't help but wonder, and why will our state legislators in office now, why won't they expand Medicaid, help these poor people? And the only reason I can come up with, they are so bound up in this ideology and allegiance to people who are contributing to their campaigns.
Yeah.
That they can't, that they cannot do like George Fraley did. He was bound. He owed allegiance to nobody except the people he was serving. That's the kind of servant we need. But just to go to Nashville or go to Washington and vote for how some group out here, like the NRA or whoever,
or ALEC,
how they want you to. Who wants a legislator like that?
Well,
For
I wouldn't
goodness
want to
sakes.
be there. I wouldn't want to be there if I couldn't vote my conviction.
I wouldn't either.
I had a person call me. I voted for a state Democratic Party leader, and on my way home, a man called me and said, "Do you realize?" He wanted me to vote for somebody else. He said, "Do you realize I contributed $1,000 to George's campaign?" Called me on the way home, and I said, "Yes, sir, I sure do." But before I came down here to vote, and I called his name, I said, before I came down here to vote, I called all 7 counties that I represent, and I asked them who they wanted me to vote for. I appreciate the $1,000 that you contributed to George's campaign, but I had to vote the way the people in these 7 counties told me to vote. And that wasn't necessarily my vote, the way I would have voted, but I had to carry the wishes of my constituents.
Exactly. And Betty, of course, everybody, I reckon, from notary public on up to the President of the United States has to take an oath when they raise their right hand. As a notary public, before I can get my notary seal, I had to make an oath before the county clerk. But you need to go online and look up the oaths that these General Assembly members, that's what they call them, make, and just see what it says. When I was a circuit court clerk, of course, I had to take an oath. And when I'd run into a problem that I was dealing with, that was what I do here, and I would actually get out my oath and read it. Now, this is what I'm supposed to do, and try to be responsible. So many times I would think, what is the responsible thing for the circuit court clerk of Franklin County to do? And when you vote for, I'd ask you that when you vote for these these city council persons, please consider that person's character, their courage. It takes courage sometimes to competently do your job in any office. Think about, do they have the courage to do what's right, to follow that oath? Read that oath. There's a part of the oath in the General Assembly people General Assembly members, that's what I'm trying to say, that says, and do no harm to persons, do not harm to, and of course I think of things like expand Medicaid, that's harming, that's hurting people.
300,000 people.
Yeah,
Well, I wanted to spend some time on the vaccination.
yes, we need
I'm
to
very
do that.
much in favor of everybody being vaccinated, and there was an opinion page in the Tennessean on Sunday, and this is another example of not doing what the constituents want done. Children sacrificed for the sake of politics. Health department professionals are scapegoats for politicians. Our grandparents would have pushed us to get vaccinated. Do you think for 1 minute that when the polio vaccine came out that we had a fit like this? I don't think so. COVID-19 actions by the state are not pro-life. Fiscus served Tennessee physicians and the public well. Fiscus sent one of her people under her an email one morning a text one morning at dawn. And the person said, why are you doing this? Why are you not asking your staff to do this minor stuff? And she said, because my staff is exhausted. I have given them a few days off. I'm filling in for what they would do. Another thing, Chahanger went to one of the places where they were vaccinating in Nashville, and he just was observing to see that everything was going okay. By the way, when Jill Biden came to Nashville and visited one of those, she was booed. Did you know that?
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, Fiscus and her husband, or Fiscus, I believe is the way you say it, and her husband had a golf cart, and they were transporting supplies from one tent to another on her day off. She was volunteering. So it sounds like to me that we made a big mistake when Fiscus was fired.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think she was sounded like to me a dedicated employee.
And trying to reach everybody she could, including the minors. I made a copy of that. I found it online, what they sent out, the health department sent out. And of course she sent out just simply a copy of what that mature minor law
Well, and see,
said.
95%,
Or case said.
95% of the people who are being hospitalized and are really, really sick have not been vaccinated. I saw a thing last night where this woman in Alabama said that a nurse said she was admitting people that were extremely sick, and they're begging me for the vaccine, and she said, I'm so sorry, but it's too late.
Yeah.
My husband lost 2 cousins and almost a third from COVID-19. It is a killer. And I noticed last night on Fox News, they've changed their tune, and they're saying, get vaccinated.
Well,
Mitch McConnell even said,
yeah.
get vaccinated.
Right.
I mean, this new Delta thing is worse than the first. And we're going to wonder, I'm afraid, we're going to wonder when school starts why we can't start school. If we don't get vaccinated, we ain't going to be able to start school. We've got to have school, people. We've got to have school.
Yeah, it's and something that's been brought out lately, and it just hurts me to think about it for people, the increase in mental health issues with children,
Yeah.
the increase in opioid deaths.
Yeah.
And guess what? People need insurance. They need a place to go to get treatment for mental issues as well. And our state administration, it would help so much if they would simply expand Medicaid so everybody could have access to health care.
And
It's just
I'm so afraid we're going to have to start wearing masks again.
yeah.
But one observation I made when we were wearing masks was that I do not know a single person who wore a mask every time they were supposed to got COVID-19. I have my first one to run into yet. I'll take that back. One lady who worked in a doctor's office wore a mask at the doctor's office. I don't know if she did everywhere else, but she had COVID-19. But that's an exception.
Yeah.
And I hated mine. I couldn't breathe. But I wore a mask.
Well,
Not just to protect myself,
but
but others.
Oh, I would be horrified if I got the sniffles or something. I thought, oh, I'm going to take it to people at work, and,
Yeah.
or I don't want my children to have to see me on a ventilator, and you just it was just
That should not have been a political thing.
No.
It should not be today. It should not be politicized. I mean, this is just common sense. You protect yourself, and see, now this that's happening now is totally avoidable. We shouldn't be having
It's
any.
unvaccinated, yeah.
All you have to do is get vaccinated. And, it's not going to kill you to get vaccinated. It is going to kill you possibly if you get COVID-19 or Delta, the variant from it.
It's difficult to understand when you think about how that was politicized, but sadly, when you think about it, everything just about, if a certain party can jump on, blame the other party.
Yeah.
I think Republicans blame Democrats more than Democrats blame Republicans, but and it started out a Democratic hoax. I remember even hearing at church.
Yeah.
They're just exaggerating the numbers.
Yeah. Somebody at church told me,
it's
says, this is all political.
Yeah, they're just saying people died with COVID when they didn't. But I want to, before we go, I want to mention something I hope would be helpful to folks out there about the Affordable Care Act. The open enrollment period ends August 15th. Now that's August. But if you want insurance, if you want to get insurance this month, go now, sign up now before July the 31st, and as I understand it, would be effective August 1st. And something else that was just made public sometime in July, in President Biden's American Recovery Act, American Rescue Plan. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It keeps coming out wrong. American Rescue Plan is that if anybody has drawn any amount of unemployment during this year, they get insurance the rest of the year for zero or close to nothing. It's probably dependent upon their income now. But if you're needing health insurance, you can just go on healthcare.gov and go down through there and answer the questions. And one of the first questions is, did you draw unemployment any time during the year? But they say any amount. If you just drew it for 1 week, you get a special benefit for the rest of the year. And of course, you can go online on your computer, on your phone, healthcare.gov. It's .gov now, not .org, or you'll land at some other place. But healthcare.gov, or the Williams folks will sign you up. Nelson Hatchett's folks will sign you up. Doesn't cost you anything. They get paid by the insurance company. Or you can call up the number. Can I remember the number? 1-800-318-2596, I believe. But you can call them up on the phone. A key thing that you have to deal with right off is your income. Many people, sadly, don't have that minimum amount of income. For one person, I think it's close to $13,000 a year, and some part-time employees don't have that. And if you fall below that amount, you don't get the tax credits. And if Medicaid were expanded, it wouldn't matter about your income. You'd get insurance. But a lot of people they call it in the gap. They're not in a category of benefits, not in a Medicaid category. For instance, I know a lady that's got TennCare now because of breast cancer that metastasized to other parts of her body. There is a category of Medicaid for women who have breast cancer or cervical cancer. There, in those few categories, you can get insurance, but otherwise, if your income is not as much as what they call that minimum federal poverty level, the 100% federal poverty level, for one person, it's almost $13,000 a year. But if you need health insurance, and you got a question about the income is a sticky point for many people, and sometimes I help people figure out, oh, you can count that, you can count that. I'll say this because I run into it. Veterans' pensions count as income toward that premium tax credit amount. Veterans' disability payments don't. But if veterans' pension, and some people have been mistaken that no veterans' income counts, but the pension money, any pension money, can be counted toward the income you need to get up to that 100% poverty level.
That's good.
Yep. So call me. I'll give you my number, 308-7150. I try to answer questions or look up stuff for people, but it's also easy just to go to V.R. Williams or Nelson Hatchett, and they will sign you up.
And I'd like for us to mention that August 21st is our reorganizational.
Oh yes, that's an important
That
day.
will be in the big room at the annex. Normally we do that in March, but because of COVID, we put it off until now. So our reorganizational meeting starts at 10. Is that right?
I believe that's right. Yeah.
10 or 10:30. The doors close at 12, so be sure and be there and be signed in by 12. But our reorganizational meeting will be August 21st.
August 21st.
At the annex.
Yeah. And if you're a Democrat and you want to join the fight, we just keep on trucking. We keep fighting. We lose elections, going, but we keep on because we want to see, we want people in our offices that take care of everybody, not just the wealthy and the corporations and the people that they're getting money from. And that's what.
And just vote the wishes of the constituents.
Right.
And I'd like to see $40 million come back into the county in grants. Wonder what's happened to the grant system. I know they have a horseback riding thing at the Walls of Jericho, which I was very glad has happened.
But remember, this long list that Betty Fraley gave you, it was a long, kind of boring list, but it's a very important list. This is what you get from Democrats. You get legislators actually serving the people and not...
And you know, Democrats and Republicans worked together when George was in the legislature. I got on the elevator with a young Republican one time when I was down there, and he said, when I grow up, I'm going to be just like your husband. I said, what has he done now? He said, well, he fell and busted his head, went to the hospital, got sewed up, came back to the floor of the legislature, and drafted 3 bills with blood dripping off the back of his head.
Oh, no.
It immediately deafened him. He was almost deaf after that
And
fall.
I'll tell you, forget about it, but when I was circuit court clerk, and when we were up at the courthouse, way back, when George was county exec then, that was at a time when counties were just trying to get computerized.
Yeah.
You know, we were feeling our way, didn't know what we were doing, but I went down to George's office one day and I said, Mr. Fraley or Mr. County, whatever I called him, I said, we need money. I said, I think I told him I needed $10,000 for a computer system. And he said, I said, well, so let's go down to the budget office and tell her to put it in there for you.
Yeah.
Easiest thing, and usually I'd have to fight like a wild woman to get from the county commission.
Yeah.
Some of them listening out there probably remember that. But, and of course, when it came up, they would have had the option of looking there and saying, hey, what's this $10,000 in here for Nancy Silvertooth, and kicking it out, you know.
Yeah.
But they didn't. But it helped a lot. But I thought I was just amazed because I think before that it wasn't that easy getting money for me.
Well, see, I worked up there because the bookkeeper quit, and the books had not been touched since March. When school was out, I was drafted. I mean, they couldn't find anybody else to do it. It was not an honor. They couldn't find anybody else to do it. I walked in that office. There were 7 sets of books that I'd never seen before. and I worked up there like a Turk all summer long and had to undergo two audits before school started back. I finished there on Friday and started back to school on Monday morning. You talk about one tired. I mean, I worked there on weekends. I mean, the whole summer I was at the courthouse.
And of course, that was probably when the county budget office handled everybody else, the highway department probably, and schools maybe.
Yeah.
They changed it later on, so.
Well, it was a hard job, I'll tell you that. But it did
yeah.
teach me that not only could I teach accounting, I could do it. It was just really, well, it was interesting. And, you know, somebody came in and wanted something. And I said, well, do you have a purchase order? They never had heard of a purchase order.
Working in county government
before.
I learned to think it was fun, but at first it was a pain learning. You operate in a county office, or any office, county, state, whatever, in a government office, totally different from the way you operate out just in out in the business world, you know. But you follow the rules and you do what you got to do your job.
And the thing that was such an adjustment to me was it was like a seance. It was so quiet. After having been at school, I could not believe how quiet it was. I almost wanted noise to make it seem normal. But it was interesting. It was the auditor, of course, put me through the mill because, I mean, it was a mess. The books that had been done were perfect. But you take from March to June 7 sets of books that nothing had been done to.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really hard work that I got paid very little to do. I mean, but it was interesting. I'll say that.
Well, Al, did we put you to sleep?
No.
No.
Well, you know, I hope that nobody takes this personal. I felt like the voters in Franklin County needed to know what has happened and what has not happened.
And a reason why you don't have to go vote with somebody with an R before their name, just because you think you through a mistaken idea that you got to, that you have to, but you don't. And I hope you will remember all these things that Representative George Fraley did, and know what Democrats can and will do.
I got most of this information from an application that he was nominated for Citizen of the Year. Do you know that with all this that he did, he never got Citizen of the Year?
Is that right?
Congratulations, Al. I don't know if I ever congratulated you or not, but I was very proud that you got Citizen of the Year.
Thank you.
I was.
Thank you.
But George he was nominated twice, but never got Citizen of the Year after doing all this.
Yeah.
He got a button that said throw out the trash on November 10th, on November 2nd.
Thank you all for listening.
All right, and once again, the early voting is going on through next Friday, the 31st. I think is what, I think that's Friday.
I hope that's right. I'm going to vote today.
Anyway, so far, there's only been 131 total people that have voted early, and we only have about a week left. So 131 people are picking who's going to run our cities. That's total in all the cities, in all of them.
131.
131 is all that have voted early as of yesterday. And that is such a sad thing.
One thing we didn't mention was almost losing our democracy on January the 6th.
Okay. 9:02, you're listening to WCDT AM 1340, W295 AVFM 106.9 in Winchester, Tennessee.